Today, we'll take an overview of the various features of the iQuote software. The screen we currently see, iQuoteWin Login, appears when the software starts and is used to identify who we are. Within the software, an administrator can create different users, each of whom can be assigned various levels of rights. For example, there can be a user who can read and write offers, a user who can only read, or one who can print but not export an offer. There are multiple levels of permissions. All these settings are stored within our user profile. Upon starting the software, we must log in with a username and password, along with specifying the server we wish to connect to and the workgroup we want or need to connect to. This is because an administrator can create different workgroups, and we might need to connect to various servers. Please note that the server address is not a local address but an Internet HTTP address. This provides two possibilities: installing the software locally on your network or hosting it in the cloud, making it accessible wherever you are. I will now log into the software using my password. iQuoteWin is the first module we will review. It features an interface listing the offers I have previously created, and I can create new offers, which we will do shortly. When creating an offer, you can start with a blank offer or a template-based one. Except for the first time, when you create a blank offer, most users will likely set up templates. Templates allow you to pre-configure settings that you would otherwise have to repeat each time. Let's take an example. I start with a template-based offer. In this case, I select my template prepared in Italian, click OK, and the software automatically creates a new offer based on this template, assigning it a code. As you can see below, there are already settings pre-configured in my template, such as the offer text language, type of work, sales manager, VAT settings, and so on. These will be discussed later. Therefore, creating a template is recommended to streamline the process when creating new offers. Let's look at the features of our offer. In this case, a progressive number has been assigned, combining the year with a sequential number. We can optionally add a prefix to the code to identify the user, department, or other indications. You can use up to 5 letters before the code, which itself cannot be modified. Furthermore, we can classify our offers and facilitate their search by adding other properties defined for an offer, such as the offer name. For example, I can name it Demo iQuote. Other details can be added, such as an internal ID code, the language of the offer texts, the offer status, and whether it was closed positively or negatively during the project and negotiation phase. If closed negatively, we can also input the reason why the offer was lost. These data entries allow an administrator or manager to generate statistics and data extractions to categorize and track offer performance. There are also drop-down menus to categorize the offer further, such as the type of work, offer expiration, operator executing the offer, current manager, customer categorizations, and more. All these menus are customizable by the administrator, allowing you to input specific data or select from predefined options. Next, we find the Customer tab, where we specify the client for the particular offer or project being created. You can manually enter customer details or select customer information from a database populated by the software. In this case, the selected client, APIS, has its values auto-filled from the database. Alongside, you can enter a subject like demonstration offer and create an opening or closing text for the offer. The opening and closing texts can be written directly in a text box or edited in a word processor-like editor. This editor allows font styling, bold, underlining, and inserting images. We also have the possibility to insert images, such as a signature or a logo, as well as text boxes, making it as easy to use as a simple Word document. The opening and closing texts can also be saved and reopened later, allowing different versions to be loaded and saved depending, for example, on the operator, the sales manager, or the client's language. This way, upon opening, both the language and the signature of the person responsible for the project are readily available. We then find the Price Lists tab. Within this tab, we can view all the brands that have been enabled for us. I would like to inform you that the software initially comes with only the demo library. Afterward, you or your administrator can request the sales price lists of other manufacturers. It will be up to the manufacturers themselves to authorize or deny the download of their libraries based on the requests received, and they may decide whether or not to include prices. At this point, the library requests are made from the administration website, which is not covered in this demonstration. It is a dedicated web panel where the administrator submits the request. If authorized, you will receive the library download, which will appear directly in this list. For this demonstration, I will use the demo library, which is included in all installations and has both the sales price list and the cost price list activated. Let me give you an example with a brand listed in our system. When I select a brand, I see the price lists I've been authorized to access on the right side. In this case, there's both a purchase price list and a sales price list, and I can select price lists by clicking the plus button. So, I can enable both the sales and purchase price lists, or only one of them, depending on what is available. In this case, I'll remove it, and once I've chosen the brands I want to work with for this offer, I can set discounts, markups, or margins for all the products of that specific brand. These settings, such as selecting the number of brands, the price list, the markups, and discounts, can all be pre-configured as part of a template. This way, I only need to set them up once, and they will apply to all offers I create. However, I can still make exceptions and modifications as needed. There is also the option to include all the brands available to me and use only the ones I need for a specific offer. For example, for our demo brand, iQuotePro, I'll apply a default discount of 10% and save the changes I made. Next, we have the Conditions tab, where all the sales conditions are listed. There are predefined labels such as validity, packaging, transport, delivery, warranty, and so on. For each of these, there is a list with pre-filled entries. Of course, the administrator can add new entries or remove existing ones to customize these lists. Additionally, there are 4 customizable fields for labels or conditions not already included in the software. You can add up to 4. We then find the Additional Costs section. These are costs added to our item list, such as delivery charges. For example, I can set a delivery cost of €300, knowing that my sale value will be €500. The delivery cost will then be added to the total price of the items. We'll later explore the pages for attachments and other properties. Let's open our offer with a double click. It's currently empty. Just a few words about the interface. The interface always features a tab dedicated to offer management, and double-clicking opens subsequent tabs where we can work on the specific offer. These tabs can remain open within the software, or, for example, you can arrange them side by side. You can drag a tab and, for example, drop it freely on the screen, place it on a second monitor, or anchor it to specific points. In this case, I've anchored it beside another offer, allowing me to compare two offers. Later, we'll also see how to easily copy elements between offers. Let's close this offer and focus on the one we just created. Let's see how to add an item and create the first element in our offer. On the left side of the screen, there is a tab or palette containing all the features we previously discussed. This palette can be detached and placed freely on the screen, anchored to one side, or set to appear only when you hover your mouse over it. In this case, I'll keep it pinned on the screen, and we'll explore the library palette where we can see the list of brands we selected in the offer management section. Once a brand is selected, all products are displayed in a navigation tree within the selected price list. You can browse the library to find items or perform a search using the search bar. You can search by code, model, description, or any other property of the items. Targeted searches can be performed within the active brand or across multiple brands by clicking an icon. This feature searches for the entered keywords across all selected brands for the offer. There are advanced search options allowing the use of operators like and, or, not, and conditions such as starts with, is less than greater than equal to, contains, or ends with. Searches can be saved and reused in the future. In our case, we'll add a neutral top to the offer. By selecting this item, the details are displayed below. These details include a short description, code, model, complete description, dimensions, packaging size, total power, and associated files like DWG or RFA files and technical sheets. If I want to view the technical sheet before adding the item to the offer, I can click an icon, which opens the sheet in a web browser. There's also a price tab showing the list price and cost price based on the selected price lists. It also pre-applies the discount set for the brand, showing the final sales price. You can adjust the quantity and explore the Accessories tab, which lists accessories compatible with the item, as provided by the manufacturer. If no accessories are listed, you can manually add any product from the library, even from a different brand. Let's select one base and one door to complement our neutral top. The Connections tab, though not applicable to this top, contains connection details for other product types. Once I've finalized the prices, quantities, and accessories, I can drag the item into the offer. This automatically adds the item and any associated accessories. Similarly, I can add other products, such as a fryer, by searching for its description, selecting it, and dragging it under the top element. Regarding the workflow, iQ offers flexibility. Whether creating an offer or a CAD project, you're not bound to follow a strict order. You can start with either environment or mix both as needed. For example, I've added items to the offer, but I can now pause and switch to the CAD design environment to continue, returning later to finalize the offer. For attachments, you can add any file related to the offer, such as emails, Word or Excel documents. Finally, I'll attach an AutoCAD project. The software will prompt for a template. I'll choose millimeter saving confirms the attachment, and with a double click, I'll open it in AutoCAD. Here, you'll see the familiar palette with the library, the offer, and additional tabs we'll explore further. As you can see, the library is essentially the same interface we explored in the quotation section. We find our brands, the option to navigate through the library, and the same items we previously saw, with the same details. Since we had already started the quotation and added some elements, if we go to the Quotation tab, we find the elements we previously inserted, such as the neutral item, the two accessories, and the fryer. However, we also see an additional column labeled Status. In this column, items that are not consistent with the design we are working on are marked with an exclamation point. For instance, the neutral top element shows an exclamation mark, and when I hover over it, I am informed that the quoted quantity is 1, but the CAD quantity is 0, meaning it hasn't been placed in the design yet. This allows me to immediately identify which items have been included in the project and which have not. To resolve the issue, I simply need to take the neutral element and drag it into the drawing area. Let's zoom in, and the top element gets placed. I position it, press the F8 key to make it orthogonal at 80 degrees. And then the software prompts me to specify the base insertion point and the accessory. I place it in the correct spot, select a fixed rotation point, and it aligns automatically with the base of the top element. Next, I position the door in the correct place. I've now configured the top element with its two accessories, and a green check mark automatically appears in the Quotation tab, indicating that this row is now aligned between the CAD and the quotation. I follow the same steps for the fryer, drag it, place it in the design, and position it. This process demonstrates that if a salesperson begins preparing a quotation to quickly provide pricing to a client by adding items to the quotation, the designer doesn't have to start from scratch when working on the project. Instead, they can build directly from the existing quotation, simply dragging items from the quotation section to the CAD section. Conversely, if the process starts with the design or if new elements need to be added later, I can return to the library and place new items into the design. For instance, I search for a pasta cooker, drag it into the drawing area, and position it just as I did with the quoted items, following the same concept. I can also use all the AutoCAD commands, such as the copy command. For example, let's note that the top element with its two accessories has a quantity of 1. If I copy it, using either the AutoCAD copy command or Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V, and paste it, the software automatically detects the copy and updates the quantity to 2, maintaining the alignment status. This seamless integration applies to all actions, such as rotations or deletions. If I delete an item from the drawing, it is automatically removed from the quotation. There's always direct synchronization between the two environments, eliminating the need for manual updates. For numbering, I can enable automatic numbering. Currently, all elements are at position 0 because I can assign numbers manually by double-clicking each position field and entering the desired number. Alternatively, I can enable automatic numbering using this button. Select a numbering style, and the system will automatically number both the project and the quotation, keeping everything aligned. For example, if I move the pasta cooker from position 3 to position 1, it will take position 1 in both the design and the quotation, and all other items will adjust their positions accordingly. The system also allows adding items using the Favorites tab. This tab lets us save frequently used item combinations. For instance, I can choose a configuration with a top element, a large base with 3 doors, another large base, and a 4-burner top stove. When I drag this favorite into my project, the software automatically places all the items, top, stove, and base, in their predefined positions. This speeds up the process of adding commonly used components to a design. Creating favorites is simple. After manually arranging a combination, I select it and save it as a favorite. The software remembers the item codes and spatial positions, making them ready for reuse in other projects or the same quotation. Let's complete the island by adding another favorite, rotating it as needed, and positioning it. Even when rotating, the software ensures that position numbers remain correctly oriented for easy readability. Now let's see how to insert a custom element, like a table matching the island's depth. I search for a table in the library, find a refrigerated table or one on legs, and bring it into the project. Obviously, in this case, I don't have a table of the correct size and want to create a custom one. I can proceed using several methods. The most direct and simple is to select the element, right-click, choose iQuotePro, and select the Customize Block option. Once I've chosen Customize Block, I have several options. These are listed both in the command bar and on the right-click menu. I can choose to create a custom block, customize the block from a file, clone it, create a special one, select geometry, or modify dimensions. As I mentioned, the simplest method is to use the Modify Dimensions command. I specify the desired width, depth, and height of my new element, and the software will scale the block to achieve those dimensions. A note, of course, this system is the fastest and simplest, but it has a drawback. The software will scale the block non-uniformly, meaning that if the scale is significant, you may notice distortions in the block itself. For example, if this table has square legs, you may see them appear rectangular, or rather, they will appear rectangular. Whether this distortion is very noticeable in a 3D view depends heavily on the scale you need to apply to this element. So, for minor adjustments, this method can be used, but if you need more specific modifications, we will look at other methods later. I input the dimensions I had pre-calculated earlier and specified that the system should mark this particular item as special. At this point, the table's size is adjusted, and if I check in the offer, I'll find my table with legs marked by a special red icon, indicating that it's a custom item. If I double-click on this table and view its dimensions, the software will have automatically updated the table's length based on the measurements I input during the design phase. Now let me show you other cases of block customization. For example, I insert a table, place it here next to the existing one, and show you how it's also possible to customize the block using the Customize Block command, selecting the Clone option. With the Clone option, this block is automatically copied and added to the drawing under a new name. This means that whatever changes we make now are not applied to the original block, but rather to the copy. The software also automatically enters AutoCAD's block editor mode, graying out the rest of the drawing, which at this point is not editable. The only editable part is the block itself, which is no longer treated as a block but has been temporarily exploded into its constituent elements. I can also enable 3D visualization, though we'll look at it in more detail later, by using the AutoCAD status bar here. I can, for example, use AutoCAD's stretch command to extend the table. I can also add elements. For instance, I can draw a circle here to indicate where I want to create a hole. Once I've made the modifications to my item, I save and accept the changes, and it becomes a block in its own right. Position number 9 now has this particular shape that I've defined. If I were to add a new table, it would once again start from the original block, having nothing to do with the customized block we created for position 9. I will now delete it. Another method is to draw a shape beforehand. For example, in this case, I'll create an ellipse. It can, of course, consist of multiple elements, such as an ellipse with a hole. Now, I want this specific drawing to become my block. I select my original table, right-click, choose iQCAD, select Customize Block, and then choose the Select Geometry option. I proceed to select the geometry I've created and press Enter. I then choose the base point, for example, the center, and I can delete the geometry since it's no longer needed. At this point, it becomes my block in every sense. The block is now the item in position 10, which has adopted the geometry I designed and selected. At any time, the software allows you to revert to the original block. By selecting the item with a custom geometry, right-clicking, and choosing iQCAD Restore Block from Library, the software will replace it with the original block. Other options for creating a custom block include importing from a file. In this case, the software asks you to select a file from your hard drive, which must be a DWG file representing the block. Alternatively, you can use the Create Special option. Clone and Create Special are essentially the same, with the difference being that the latter also adds a special flag, marking it as such. Now, I'll delete this table and return to our configuration. If we check in the offer, we'll see our item marked as special, along with an icon that indicates whether the block in question is a custom block or a standard, official library block. Another tab found within the CAD palette is the one dedicated to architectural elements, containing commands for creating walls, doors, and windows. While iQuote is not intended to be an architectural software, it includes utilities that allow you to design an environment using basic elements. So, I can create a wall in this case with a thickness of 300 and a height of 3000. I specify the first point, indicate that I have a room 6 meters long, then go down 8 meters for the other wall, back 6000, and to close at the starting point, I press Enter. Among the various options, I select the one to close at the starting point, so my room is completed. I can move the elements to the desired position, and here we have commands for creating niches, pilasters, columns, and pillars. We can also insert doors. For doors, there are several models available, and you can, for example, create only the opening without inserting the door or do both. Everything depends on the dimensions you specify. For example, with a width of 800, only single doors are available, while if I set it to 1600, double doors appear as an option. I insert a double door with a panic bar and position it on this wall, specifying the distance from the corner, 300 in this case, and that I want the door to open outward since it has panic handles. The same applies to windows. I choose a type of window, draw it, and specify that I want it on this wall at a certain distance from the corner. I repeat the operation a couple of times to add another window, placing it here. We also have a miscellaneous tab where you'll find commands for creating wall coverings with tiles or sheet metal, as well as commands for creating floors and ceilings, baseboards, or various utilities for joining walls where openings have been created, for example. First, I create the floor and ceiling. I select a point inside a closed area, and the software automatically detects the area and places both the floor and the ceiling. In this area, I create a wall covering. I select it from this point to this point and specify that it's on this side. In other words, the tile should be placed on this side. If we zoom in, we can see a double line indicating the thickness of the tiles or the wall covering. So, we've created an environment and added some items to it. I return to the Favorites tab to complete the project by adding equipment to this wall, such as a linear composition. This is a predefined composition containing a series of items I've already configured, which I position directly next to the wall. So, we've created an environment and added some items to it. I return to the Favorites tab to complete the project by adding equipment to this wall, such as a linear composition. This is a predefined composition containing a series of items I've already configured, which I position directly next to the wall. At this point, the various elements of my composition are inserted. Now, I'll show you some utilities within the iQuoteCAD panel. Here, we have the Align Position command. With this command, I select all the items that are part of the composition, but only the position numbers are taken into account. I specify the line onto which I want to project and align all the position numbers, and I repeat the operation on the other sides as well. In this case, I need to keep the position numbers slightly higher to make it easier to read them in relation to the items. For the same position numbers, for example, by going to the AutoCAD Options menu and opening the iQuoteCAD tab, I can specify that the position numbers should be enclosed by a border. As a result, the position numbers are outlined. I can also divide my offer into zones. For instance, let's look at our offer. At the moment, all the items are listed in the order in which we physically inserted them. Within the project, I select this group of items, right-click, choose iQuoteCAD, then Area Management. From here, I can either select a name from the drop-down menu or type the area name myself. I choose the description, Cooking, insert it, and confirm with OK. If we check the offer, we'll see that the Cooking zone has been created, and all the elements I had selected have been grouped under it. If I collapse the Cooking branch, you can see that all the elements are contained within it. I do the same with the elements from another zone. I select them, right-click, choose iQuoteCAD, Area Management, and this time select Refrigeration. I insert the zone at the end, creating a new zone labeled as number 2. I confirm with OK, and if we check the offer again, we can see the Refrigeration zone with its corresponding elements. I can also drag the descriptions I just created for zones 1 and 2 into my drawing. For example, I take the description of the Cooking zone and drag it into my drawing area, placing a label for this zone. I do the same for Refrigeration, dragging and placing the label for the second zone. As previously mentioned, everything remains synchronized with the offer. If, for instance, we now open or view the offer in the iQuoteWin software, we'll see exactly the same details as those in the CAD environment. If, for any reason, the sales representative decides to make changes within the offer, for example, renaming the cooking zone to dietetic cooking and saving it, or adding new items such as an additional fryer, then when the designer opens the CAD drawing, they will notice a few updates. First, the zone name will automatically update to dietetic cooking. Second, an indication will appear that the fryer is not yet present in the CAD drawing, suggesting that the designer drag and drop it into the drawing to align the two sets of information. In this case, I don't need it, so I'm going to delete it. But you'll see that by deleting it here, the position number 9 will automatically disappear from the offer seen by the sales team or from the iQuotePro software. Within the software, we also have configurators, a shelf configurator with which I can add shelving. First, I choose the brand, in this case iQuotePro, select the depth of my shelf, and then I enter the number of items I want. For example, the first item I want with 5 shelves and a height of 1500 and width of 1520. I then add a subsequent item to the first one, and compared to the first, I can indicate whether it should have a counterclockwise orientation and one of the two solutions, or clockwise, or be aligned with the previous one. In this case, I choose a counterclockwise alignment. I want this solution and I'm fine with the same height of 1500 because at this point, I make it the same as the previous one. I choose the same width. Then, I add a third item. I want it aligned with the previous one and also with 5 shelves. If I don't remember what I did with item number 2, I can go back to item number 2 and see how it was or change what I need. Once I've defined the elements of my shelving, I confirm with OK and place the items within my drawing. Once placed, of course, I can move and reposition them. I select them and reposition them within the drawing area. If necessary, I can also reposition the position number. I drag it to the desired location and within our offer, a new type of element has been added, which is the shelf, and I can always place it within an area. As before, I open the Area Management command. I can set the description to Pantry, insert my area at the bottom, and this will be inserted within the pantry area. Then, I can add the label and place it in this position. We place it here, then rotate it with the Rotate command. We select it, rotate it, and place it next to our shelving. Other configurators available within the iQuotePro environment in the dedicated tab are the Hood configurator and the Floor Grill configurator. Let's look at both. To insert a hood, I first select the first point, the second point, and the third point of the area where I need to create the canopy. Let's refine the points by zooming in, first point, second point, and third point. This command allows us to see the dimensions I have entered, which are 2.700 by 1860 on the screen. A certain border margin is then proposed based on the points I provided. This margin can be adjusted in the options, and the software will store it, suggesting it the next time we use the command and interact with the library, searching for all canopies in the library that match these dimensions. I can also search for canopies within certain tolerances, such as those measuring around 2.900 by 2060. Additionally, the software performs another function. Whether or not it finds a canopy with those exact dimensions, it will also search for canopies in the library that the manufacturer has declared as custom-made, i.e., those made to measure. In this case, the software adapts the canopy to the necessary dimensions for our project since we will be purchasing it custom-made. For our project, in the iQuote demo library, there is a canopy that is sold custom-made, so by selecting this canopy, it automatically adjusts the width and depth to meet the measurements we entered. This depends on the manufacturer and their library, whether or not they offer custom-made canopies in their catalog. We select the canopy, click OK, and it is placed within the project. The same principle applies to floor grids. I can select one point and another to create the grid, and a similar window appears. I can choose from a library of custom or standard grids that match the selected dimensions, click OK, and the grid is positioned within the project and also included in my offer. It is also possible to insert the grid and canopy directly into the correct area. I haven't done that, but I can always modify it here in the offer, dragging the canopy to the cooking area and the grid to the refrigeration area. Let's now look at the Layout tab. In this tab, I can create views and viewpoints, manage layers to turn on/off information about 2D, 3D, connections, and annotations, and the software helps me create a detailed plan. For our project, we begin by placing lighting, as we will need it for rendering or shading the project. I go to the Lighting tab, create a series of lights using the settings, and adjust the intensity by decreasing it. There are several settings to determine the lighting layout. I input the room dimensions, and the software automatically places a series of lights according to the rules set. There is always the option to modify these settings or adjust individual lights simply by selecting them, and the software will automatically update the selected lights. Now we can create a view. Open the Dedicated tab, create a camera with a 25mm lens, set the height to 2 meters, and focus on 50 centimeters from the ground. I click the command, specify the camera position, and the viewing direction. The software automatically creates the view as requested. Later, we will see how to do a photorealistic render of this view. Let's return to the Layout tab, and you will see that the iQuote Camera 1 view is now in the list, which is exactly the stored representation of this view. This allows us to easily call up the view at any time or insert it into the final layout. We return to the floor plan view and look at the commands related to connections and creating execution tables. I reset my palette and turn on the connection-related layers. As you can see, I can selectively turn on layers by connection type, electrical, water, gas, or all at once. Each connection has 4 types of layers: internal connection, which is the connection at the machine; external connection, which is the wall preparation for the machine connection; a layer for measurements; a layer for annotations, which includes leaders. Let's focus on a piece of equipment. For example, this refrigerated table. We have 2 types of connections. First, we look at the characteristics of the refrigerated table, and to view them, I open another palette called the Editing palette. I close this one and select an item within the drawing area. The properties of this item appear in the palette, and if I deselect the refrigerated table and select the sink, its properties will be displayed instead, and so on. Now, we select the refrigerated table, go to the Connections tab, and see the 2 connections, single-phase electricity and drain 1. Below, we can see the characteristics of both the internal and external connections, i.e., the machine connection and the preparation required for installation. The default settings for both internal and external connections are copied exactly, but we can modify the different information. I can change the height, power, frequency, etc. Any data can be modified for the external connection, which will also affect the geometry. For instance, if I change the height, the symbol for the connection will move up on the z-axis, and I can also modify the symbol, i.e., the diagram that identifies how the preparation should be done. For example, I can assign two types of symbols for the single-phase electrical and drain connections. Next, we can save the changes and modify the position of the external connection simply by selecting the base point of each symbol and placing them on the wall or wherever I need them. The software recognizes the modifications made, so if we click on this element, the two symbols appear, and if we wish, we can save the configuration with a name. We can then select the article in the connection configuration, and the software will present the current configuration with the symbols we applied and the X, Y, and Z positioning deltas for the connection. These details can be stored with a name, as though we have taught the software a particular installation type for this piece of equipment. This will be useful the next time we use the same equipment. For example, we can take the code of this equipment, copy it, and insert it again into our drawing. After searching for it in the library and selecting the refrigerated table, we place it in the project. Let's position it here temporarily as a test. If we check its connections, there are no special symbols, and the external connections are still above the internal connections. If we select the configuration command and then select our equipment, the external connections will apply the configuration we saved earlier, placing them where they were stored. If we check the characteristics, we'll see the symbols we saved. Let's now remove this equipment since we don't need it. Of course, the number of configurations that can be saved is almost infinite, though only one can be saved as the default configuration. Now, let's see how to apply annotations to our connections. Go to the Layout tab and find the commands for dimensioning connections. For example, I choose electrical connections, create a dimension using the iQuote style, and specify that I want a baseline dimension. I select all equipment and only the electrical connections are filtered and selected. After pressing Enter, we select the starting point and the end point for the dimensions, and the software will automatically dimension all external connections. We can also apply leader annotations or leaders. First, go to the Options section to configure a bullet point style. Then select either for equipment or for connections. In our case, we choose electrical connections and configure the bullet points. I insert, for example, the power type and then the voltage below. I stop here, but of course, we can insert any kind of information for the selected connection type. Click OK to apply. If we want to add bullet points or leaders to the connections, we select them and position the bullet points. The type, power, and voltage will be displayed for each connection. The same applies to equipment. If I want to add leaders to products, I can select the entire central island, choose horizontal positioning instead of vertical, and place the leaders with just the code. This leader can be repositioned individually, and the line and arrow identifying the item will adjust automatically to the new position of the text. I'll delete this to keep the drawing clearer. As mentioned earlier, all this information is placed on dedicated layers, allowing you to turn on or off specific systems within the layout, for instance, leaving the electrical part on with dimensions and leaders for just the electrical connections. Now let's see how to work with layout views. Go to a layout at 0, insert a dimension, and select an Italian title block. These details are customizable by an administrator, who can prepare your company's title blocks and save them for insertion using the same command. We create views the same way we did in the AutoCAD model space. Before creating views, it's always a good idea to go back to the model space and turn on all 2D and 3D layers. The software will automatically determine which layers to turn on or off for each individual view. Back in the Zero layout, we create a floor plan view, for example, selecting 2 points, and the software will automatically insert our floor plan view. If, for example, we want to turn on the electrical connection layers for this view, we only need to select the boundary and specify that we want the electrical connections on. If I also want to create the view we prepared earlier with the camera, I can go to the drop-down menu, select iQuotePro, and position my view with the shaded mode within it. Similarly, I can continue to create windows and views and turn layers on and off as needed. I can also insert a legend inside or one or more legends into our drawing, and this is done from the Offer tab. There is a command dedicated to legends, allowing us to create various legend templates. If an administrator or user needs to create templates, they can do so, and in each template, it is possible to choose all the columns to display, along with justifications, totals, or any other details. In this case, we use preloaded templates, so we choose a legend model, such as electrical, where some information like code, model, location, quantity, and specific details about electrical connections are chosen, such as power, voltage, frequency, height, and symbols. Since not all equipment has electrical connections, I can also decide to hide all equipment that doesn't include electrical connections and position this legend within the CAD environment. Below, we can see our legend with various information. This is, in fact, an AutoCAD table, so I can modify it, resize the table, increase the size of some rows or columns. For example, in this case, I can increase the row height to make the symbols more readable and visible. In the same way, I can create other types of legends, such as a commercial legend, which lists all the products in my project and positions it within the CAD sheet. Here, for example, we have the dimensions and general information about our article. Now, let's return to our offer, but before doing so, I'd like to go back to the modeling environment and render the scene we created. Let's go back to our camera view, and once I've decided the angle I want, I'll physically launch the rendering command. Since this takes some time, let's continue by looking at the offer part, and we will return to view the finished render later. We choose the rendering quality, a medium quality with HD resolution, and start the render. Then we move on to the offer environment. As previously mentioned, in our offer, everything has automatically updated based on the changes and additions made in the CAD environment. Now, let's look at some commands within the offer environment. We've already seen how we set a 10% discount on all equipment from the iQuote demo library, but I'll show you how you can also intervene individually, for example, by double-clicking on a single item and modifying the discount applied to it. You can also select a group of equipment, such as all those in the refrigeration area, and use a palette on the right to apply a different discount to all of them, in this case, a 20% discount. I'll then show you how to keep our offer up to date. For instance, offers can last a long time, and during this time, a price list or catalog update may occur. We have a command called synchronize data that allows us to compare the information in our offer with the data in the library from various manufacturers. In this case, we've just synchronized, but let's create a discrepancy. For example, I open the refrigerated table and change the description to refrigerated table 290 liters and leave it at that, removing part of the description, or I can modify the list price to 2,700. I save it. Let's assume a new price list or update for this library has been released. When I synchronize the data, the differences between my offer and the price list are highlighted. For our refrigerated table, it shows that there is a difference in the description and the list price. I can choose to update all information or only some of it, and it also highlights the change for the table on legs with a shelf, which we had changed from 1,200 to 1,890. Because it's special, the software recognizes this and defaults to suggesting not to update the information because I've deliberately modified it. I confirm, and the table now shows the correct description and list price. There are also commands for row aggregation. When this command is run, the software searches for items that are exactly the same within the same area. For example, in the dietetic cooking area, there are two neutral top items, one in position 4 and one in position 6, which are exactly the same description, same characteristics. If desired, I can select them and choose to group them together, increasing the quantity to 2. This is, of course, a decision that can be made or not made, and this command helps highlight these situations. Inside the offer software, we also have the same legend creation command. Even if I don't have the CAD design part available, I can still create an electrical legend exactly like the one we inserted in the layout. Here, I can print or export it in one of the supported formats, PDF, Word, Excel, text file, etc. There are also commands for general export. For example, if we want to export our offer into management software or other systems, the export command shows a grid of the items in the offer, and we can configure the layout, meaning the column placement and the information we want to display in the grid. Using a column selector, I can add or remove information. If, for example, I want the dimensions, I can add the width, depth, and height, then export it in various available formats. The layout used for the export can also be saved in a library, so I can create different layouts depending on the destination of the offer and the information I want to display. I can change the type and grid layout easily and immediately from a drop-down menu, selecting any pre-saved layout. The same concept of layout saving also applies in the main offer grid. Here, I can use the Save, Open, Delete, and Edit commands to modify the layout. In this case, we have a commercial layout showing the code, model, description, and pricing. I've prepared a different layout, for example, technical. Selecting this layout changes the number of columns, removing certain columns and adding others that provide more technical details, such as dimensions, weight, power of the various items. I can easily switch between one type and another and create as many layouts as needed. We also find, as in the design environment, the entire management of favorites, the library management as mentioned earlier, and the detail of the selected rows. The same palettes we saw in CAD are also present in the offer environment. We also have the option to print our offer. We find offer prints, sales analysis, or catalog prints. Starting with the offer print, opening the command shows a preview page, which applies the default layout, including our opening page, sales conditions, and the list of items with images, full descriptions, and other information. At the end of our offer, we find summaries, including a technical summary with various power ratings, an economic summary by zone, and final totals. The print layout can be controlled by a template manager, where we can create custom templates. For each template, we can decide which information to turn on or off, and we can also change layout aspects like background colors, positioning of elements, fonts used in the print, and header-footer settings. For both the header and footer, there's a word style editor where we can write whatever we want and even insert images or text boxes. In this case, I've prepared a template with our logo. When in the print preview, I can switch between configurations immediately from this drop-down menu, and the preview updates with the new template. Similarly, we have the sales analysis print, which shows a summary of the margins for each item, including both cost price and the final sale price, along with a margin summary by zone and a total summary. The catalog print analyzes all the items in the offers. For each, it identifies and retrieves the related technical sheet PDF. If found, it's shown in the grid. If not, we can manually retrieve it from our disk if we downloaded it from the internet, or if not available, we can generate a virtual technical sheet for that product using available database information. We can print the catalog, where all these technical PDFs are compiled into a single print or saved into a single PDF with all technical sheets combined. An index is also included, which can be disabled in the options if desired. The summary of each page with information about the zone, position, model, and item found is displayed, and if we go to page 2, for example, we find the technical sheet for that particular item. There are also partial indices, which can be disabled, with all the technical sheets found in our archive. I remind you that you can access the technical sheet directly from the grid, so when I select the symbol, it opens the browser with the selected technical sheet. As a final step, let's look at the administration site, where we can consult the offers we've made through an internet browser. I can do this from a computer, tablet, phone, or any station where iQuote is not installed. This web version doesn't require a license, so it's completely free, but the limitation is that it's read-only, so I can only view the offers and not modify them. We find the login screen again, enter my credentials, and access the offer archive in a moment. We see our offer archive, and for example, we find the offer 210001 we just created and worked on. We can see the main features, expand the details, and view all the information about this offer, such as general information, client details, areas within it, and any attachments like the DWG, price lists, sales conditions, additional costs, etc. If I open the offer, we see the list of items, and for each item, I can view its details, including connections, accessories, and other properties, along with all the prices. I also have access to the photo and the product's technical sheet PDF. We also have the ability to print it exactly as seen in the offer program, using the same templates we've already created. For example, I can use the iQuote template we saw earlier, press OK, and get the print. Here's our print. I can have a multi-page view, and by scrolling through the pages, I find the various products included in our offer. Just like with iQuoteWin, I have the option to print it physically or export it in one of the available formats. Before concluding this presentation, let's check the render, which should now be ready and finished processing. We're at 25% right now. Let's zoom in a bit to find the correct size. Keep in mind this is a quick test render for this demonstration, so it was done quickly without much editing. However, I'll show you some renders created earlier for another example in our archive. These renders took more time, including adding some furniture elements. Here's another example. This render was taken from above, and here's a different angle. On the last one, for example, we changed the wall color, altering the lighting slightly. Thank you for following this demonstration. It was a review of the main commands, and we didn't go into the details of every single command. In fact, some commands weren't mentioned, and I'll refer you to individual videos for the various functionalities where specific topics are explored in greater depth. Thanks again to everyone.